Hey everyone, with Worlds behind us now, I have finally the chance to mess around with some less dominant archetypes. Here we have Jinteki Potatoes Unleashed, and I did do a review on this in my escalation data pack review. If you haven't watched it, go do so. But the gist of it is, with this ID, you want to build a deck where milling is killing. This is not a flatline ID in the sense that you don't actively try to kill the runner by leaving them with less than 0 cards in hand at the or rather by killing them with like Ronin's or Biotech's ability or Neuro EMP. What you do with this deck is you attempt to mill the runner out, make them run out of cards so that and then find the final few net damage to finish them off. So I'd like to compare this to Fury Info, which is the sync that I brought to Worlds, and explain why this is not a tier 1 tournament strategy compared to Fury Info. Firstly, there's no alternative win condition. In Sync, I have quantum predictive models which synergize with my strategy. In Fury Info, my strategy is to kill the runner by tagging them and then using Boom. But I do have the alternative win condition. I can actually viably get to 7 agenda points because if the runner is tagged, they score QPMs for me, the kitties, as well as enabling exchange of information. So this gives me an alternative path to victory, using the same condition of tagging the runner. Whereas with Potatoes Unleashed, even when I try to mill the runner out, I'm not achieving my alternative win condition. I cannot get to 7 agenda points by milling the runner out. It's just not a thing that is built into the game just yet. There are no cards that synergize with this. As such, this is a pure mill deck. This deck does not try to score 7 agenda points as well, because it does not have the card pool necessary to do so. It doesn't have exchange of information, the equivalent in Potatoes Unleashed. It doesn't have the equivalent of the quantum kitties. So you can't really score 7 agenda points. That's just the reality of it. The second thing is that this doesn't have much support. With Fury Info, you have multiple ways, a multitude in fact, to tag the runner. You have 24/7 news cycle, you have hard-hitting news, you have data ravens and the like, and of course all these are bolstered by your ID's ability, which makes tag clearing that much harder. With Potatoes Unleashed, the only thing that's helping you mill your opponent is your ID ability. And this makes you very vulnerable. Even though the ID ability is strong, so strong that it warrants a 12 influence cap, it can be easily shut down with Employee Strike. This is the biggest problem of Potatoes Unleashed. You will basically lose your only win condition if you get struck by employees. So we have to be very mindful of that when building our deck. So I've been looking at the card pool, and one card that really stands out to me that could work pretty well in Potatoes Unleashed is Preemptive Action. This is a fake Jackson Howard. It doesn't really accomplish what Jackson Howard does for obvious reasons. While it doesn't really help fair decks like normal Glacier decks or even fast advanced decks, this empowers unfair decks, and this is quite important because Potatoes Unleashed at the end of the day is kind of an unfair deck because it attempts to attack from an angle that isn't traditional, like traditional scoring agendas. As I said, it doesn't try to score agendas. So yes, it's something that empowers this deck because it abuses recursion. Now, recursion is very dangerous in card games, and especially in Netrunner. You see a lot of degenerate strategies rely on recursion. A lot of the scourges of the meta often rely on recursion cards like Museum of History. Same old thing to recur blackmails, to recur siphons. This is no different. With Preemptive Action, we are able to support Potatoes Unleashed by regrowing the potatoes to throw at your opponent. And what this means is basically, you can recur your net damage cards, your Neuro EMPs, your traps. When they run R&D, guess what? You have more shocks, more snares to throw at your opponent. This is what it's all about, and this is what we're going to try to do with today's deck. So we're up against a Blackmail spam Valencia here, and to be honest, when I think about it, this Potatoes Unleashed deck strategy is pretty similar to Fury Info, which I talked about earlier. What you really want to do early on is to stabilize, have a good economy base, then you can trigger all your traps, then you can actually start threatening remotes. So I play the Celebrity Gift on turn 1, and then I play Ice on R&D, knowing that my opponent is probably not on the Count Siphon. I have a bit of inside knowledge there. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. Even if I'm forced to put Ice on HQ, it doesn't really matter much. I could leave R&D undefended. There are lots of traps in R&D, but I decide to do this. Because my Ice is not really that good. Now, speaking of Ice, because of PU's ability, the runner cannot really run to face check Ice. There's a lot of nasty Ice out there. Komainu, Aiki. Aiki is particularly painful because it triggers potatoes twice. You throw 2 potatoes at your opponent in addition to dealing with 2 net damage. So that's quite lovely. I also managed to find an early end run in Vanilla. There are not that many end runs in this deck. It's mostly net damage Ice that synergizes with Potatoes Unleashed. And speaking of net damage, I've drawn into 2 of my traps, both snares. This is a good and bad thing. It deters aggression. With the early Celebrity Gift, I show the snare. So my opponent is very unlikely to hit R&D. Instead, they're going... Sorry, HQ. Instead, they'll go for R&D. You can see the medium online. So the bad thing about this is I'm not able to capitalize on having snares because they are not in my deck. They're in my hand. So it's a lot. My deck is a lot less spiky, which is not good for me. I have to decide here what my next line of play is. With this deck, you really want to score House of Knives. Now, House of Knives is an amazing agenda because not only does it do 3 damage over the course of time, it also triggers potatoes 3 times. 3 whole potatoes to throw at your opponent. I'll take that any day. And you can also decide when to throw it, making a very targeted ability. Unfortunately, I'm not drawing to any potatoes. All I'm drawing are my traps. So the best thing I can do here is to play it like Jammy HB, another one of my trademark decks. I'm gonna put a Never Advance card in the remote, put a piece of ice on it so it doesn't look that suspicious, and hope my opponent blackmails it. But no, James goes for the R&D, doesn't see anything. On persons my Aiki, not cool mate, this is not friendship. I'm not happy about that, or especially with a medium live, and he steals a global food. So thankfully I do have the pop-up to replace it. Even though it's just a pop-up, even though Valencia can easily just run through the pop-up using bad pup and get accesses every time, she doesn't know it's a pop-up. That's the beauty of it. So R&D is kind of safe for now. I'll make it even safer by killing the same old thing with Best Defense. Amazing card, Best Defense, even though I'm not dishing out tags unless my opponent doesn't clear tags from Snare. It gets rid of recursion cards like Same Old Thing, which is very crucial. That's 1 less blackmail, 1 less on person that I have to worry about. That's pretty cool. My pop-up's gonna stay more relevant with that. Unfortunately rather, my Valencia opponent finds another blackmail, goes for 3 cards, no traps. Why no traps? Because they're all in my hand. There's one in the remote. He's not going for it. So I show him the snare. I'm gonna put another card in there. It's not a snare. Or is it? It is. Let's see if he falls for this one. I'm just really relying on the threat of House of Knives at this point. Every runner knows that they have to fetch the House of Knives. If they don't, they are in for some serious hurt. Every time my opponent blackmails, he has to worry about this House of Knives trigger, but no, he correctly identifies I haven't drawn a House of Knives yet, otherwise I would have jammed it. Instead going for R&D to see 4 cards, a pretty good deal for him. Seeing 4 cards is almost always preferable to running an unknown remote that could be a snare, a psychic field, a shock. Those are pretty bad odds for my opponent. Didn't see any agendas, didn't see any traps, but knows that the Neuro EMP is coming up. I could play the Neuro here. I've stabilized, I've managed to find enough money, but no, I need to purge here. I am very concerned about Rebirth into Omar and Blackmail Recursion, especially with Wildside ticking down. I cannot afford to give my opponent 5 accesses the next run. Usually I'm more than okay with medium accesses because it triggers snares and shocks. Not this time because my snares and shocks are in the wrong place. So, since they're in the wrong place, I'm trying to get them in the right place. This is why I'm trashing and overwriting my snares. They will then go into the bin, where I can recur them with either Jackson or Preemptive Action. Currently, I'm not going to play either of those cards because I do not have a critical mass of traps in my deck, in my archives just yet. I want to wait till there are 3 net damage cards in my archives before triggering Preemptive Action. So, you see me here overwriting the snare with a shock. This is the 3rd time I'm jamming something to the remote. I'm really hoping that my opponent will play a DDoS or something. And I recur the snares immediately. So, 2 snares and a Best Defense to kill the Same Old Thing was okay in my books. All I wanted to do is to make sure that if my opponent was going to play Same Old Thing, they would sack it immediately. So they cannot, knowing that Best Defense goes back to R&D, Valencia cannot afford to leave Same Old Things lying on the table in case they want to levy. And this is actually a really huge threat. Why? Because if they are forced to hold same old things in their hand, they are vulnerable to net damage. Most of the time, resources are safe once installed, but with best defense around, you cannot be sure of that. So all his recursion pieces, deja vu, same old thing, they are liable to net damage as soon as he draws them. So this is a hidden benefit. Now, unfortunately, my opponent rebirths into Omar, gets an Omar trigger, runs R&D, hits a shock. So that's good for me. The shock goes back in the bin, but that's the damage done. That's my first potato trigger of the game. One potato in your face, Omar. With Omar being so old and everything, I don't think he can take too many potato triggers. In fact, my opponent is down to 22 cards in stack. Only 22 cards left to work through. However, Levy's a problem. My opponent deja vu a Levy because the shock hit a Levy. So now I'm going to score Philotic Entanglement, and the 1 in 5 hit. The 1 in 5 Philotic net damage hit the Levy in his hand. So getting rid of the Levy is huge, because early on, the first turn of the game, remember, I played Celebrity Gift to show Arc Knockdown. My opponent knows at the back of their mind, the Arc Knockdown is active. They must get the Levy back. If they don't get the Levy back, that's it, right? If they lose their only Levy, I am in a very prime position to deck them out. And things are made better when my opponent decides to use Omar first click, triggering Snare, losing a potato, losing 3 cards. Oh my gosh. Forced to pop the trope preemptively to salvage the Levy from the bin so that it won't get arc locked down. Mission accomplished. By saving his Levy, I forced him to use one of his recursion pieces, the trope. And now I'm gonna play Neuro EMP, sniping a blackmail from his hand, triggering net damage, throwing a potato at him, and then do it all over again with preemptive action. That's the second copy of preemptive. Shocks go back in the deck, snares go back in the deck. You can Omar all you like, you can see 3 cards, but guess what's gonna hit you? Let's see. Medium, snare, trigger, 3 net damage, 1 potato, shock, 1 net damage, 1 potato. Let's look at his bin. The damage is done. The Levy's in the bin. He has 2 clicks to save the Levy again. Very aggressive play. That's going to hurt him real bad. Maybe he should have drawn the Levy before playing so aggressively. So this is a big problem for my opponent. If they don't have a deja vu in hand, they are done. They are so done. He's trying to think of an out. I don't think he has one. Draws a card. Doesn't look like a deja vu. That's it. Alright, time to go on the offense. Best defense is a good offense. But it's not best defense that we're going to use here. We are going to lock down the Levy, take a couple credits, and arc lockdown. You'll notice that even though I haven't res a single piece of ice this game, and I've barely scored any agendas, I'm actually not that high on credits. Turns out firing snares is painful for your economy. So clearly this deck does do very badly against Siphon Spam, but it also means that you need to play a lot more conservatively. Just like Fury Info, you want to click for credits a lot. Without credits, you cannot threaten snares, and that's a big part of your game. So this is why I prefer snares and shocks to psychic fields. You can't really threaten a very spiky R&D with psychic fields, but snares and shocks give you that ability. And shocks, while they are usually very benign, with potatoes unleashed, you really can unleash the hurt on your opponent. He goes for another medium dig, no agendas, but I get another 2 hit points off, 1 potato, 1 net damage to his face with yet another shock. And he's forced to trash them every single time. He has to. Otherwise, he can't medium dig again. So this deck is just like Fury Info. So many parallelisms, is incredibly effective against medium diggers. Now, I want to turn the attention to tags. My opponent has hit 2 snares so far, has 2 tags on him. I've definitely considered trashing that wild side, but that wild side is actually doing me a lot more good than harm. The wild side is actually actively harming my opponent. It's forcing him to deck out. If he doesn't use his cards within his 3 clicks, he's forced to discard them. It's kind of like potatoes triggering for me myself. So I'm more than happy to leave the wild side there. If he installs a chronotype, you bet I'm going to kill the chronotype. He has to clear tags if he gets the chronotype up, and even then, he's just going to deck himself. Now he tries for a desperate solution here, run a mock into HQ, on person HQ, and hammering my HQ. Probably works out fine for him if he gets the Jackson, but he doesn't. So I escape with the Jackson, and the Jackson's gonna recur, shock, snare, shock, surprise! That R&D is super spiky. I don't even need to ice archives at this point. He can snipe into my R&D all he wants. Probably not gonna get too many agendas, gonna get a face full of shocks and snares instead. Now, Admittedly, I've been very lucky with agendas so far. They're all buried at the bottom of my deck apparently because there are only 5 agenda points in circulation, and I have already worked through 40% of my deck. So yeah, I'm getting quite lucky in the sense that I don't see agendas. I don't want agendas. They are not part of my game plan at all. They're in my deck only because I'm forced to include them. Shuck! Steals a House of Knives. There's the agenda. Alright, so my opponent needs 2 more agendas to win, but they are decked out. Completely decked out. They have 5 hit points left. No more levies, no more tropes. This is looking good for me. I just need to hold on out for a bit longer. And this is where Neuro EMP comes in. A passive opponent can just lay back, hold all their blackmails in hand, and wait till I advance cards and remotes, forcing myself to deck out. But that's not going to happen, because with Neuro EMPs, I can force runs and then whittle away at his hand. It should also be noted that, yes, because of preemptive action, it does kind of the same thing as Jackson in the sense that it prolongs the game. And Museum of History, of course. By reshuffling cards from archives to R&D, you are extending the clock that normally is imposed on the corp. Snare hits, I kill 3 cards, he's down to 1 hit point left. So this is almost certainly game. I have a Neuro EMP in hand, so I'm definitely going to try to draw for it. I'm going to reshuffle my second Neuro EMP that's in the bin back into R&D and play the one that I have in my hand. So now my opponent's completely out of cards. If they hit any net damage, they lose, such as here. But my opponent says, hey wait, I realized that Archive's Ice is probably Komainu since you showed it to me. I'm gonna do an Omar run instead. So I let him take it back, he runs Archives, hits the shot, the last shot to close out the game. Wow. Whew, 3 snares, 5 shocks, 8 potatoes tossed at my opponent. That's not something that most runners can deal with, and this is all down to preemptive action. How do you get 5 shocks? Even with 3 Jackson Howards, you don't see it nearly as often enough. But with preemptive action, it really enables this arguably degenerate strategy of reusing your ambushes. Each recursion piece, Jackson or preemptive, gives you 3 net damage cards to recycle. So that's a total of up to 21 shocks if you so choose. That's crazy. Between the potato triggers and all my ambushes, I managed to snipe half of my opponent's 50 card deck. Think about it. It's just insane. You're crippling them so hard. Every time you reshuffle those ambushes back into R&D, it becomes very dense with ambushes. You're talking about 3 snares and 3 shocks, 6 cards in a deck of about 30 cards. That's roughly 20% chance on every single axis of getting hit by a potato. Multiply that by the number of medium counters they are using, and voila. That is just an insane amount of milling going on. I haven't even factored in the fetal AIs. Didn't see a single one that game. So my opponent had very few outs by the time they got to the end game with no cards in hand because they couldn't steal fetal AI. So the other thing that preemptive action does is that by shuffling in ambushes into your R&D, you're also reducing the agenda density in R&D at the same time, which is really cool. Unlike Fury Info, you can't score agendas. You don't have a lot of 2-1s to fast advance from hand, and your remote's almost always not very secure. So it's actually quite important that this deck has a lot of recursion to lower the agenda density. Well, there's one big problem with this deck, and it is that it just dies to Levy. If my opponent managed to fire off that Levy that game, if I weren't so lucky with my sniping with the Philotic Entanglement, the game would have dragged out a lot longer, and that probably would have went in the runner's favor, because if I can't force them to cycle, yeah, if they get like 75 hit points, or up to 100 hit points if they get 2 full run-throughs to the deck, that's not enough net damage to reduce the 100 cards to nothing. So this is why I need to run Arc Knockdown in this deck, solely to counter Levy. On the flip side, if the runner draws their Levy early, they're basically forced to use it early, because if they know that I run Arc Knockdown, they have to keep in mind that the Levy could get sniped at any point, go into the bin with a Neuro EMP followed by an Arc Knockdown to lock them out of the Levy. So there's the upside there, the fact that most of the time the runner will be forced to pop the Levy preemptively. And yeah, preemptive action on the runner side versus preemptive action on the corp side. Who will win? Really depends on your luck of the draw, but in any case, that's what makes the game fun. Thanks for watching, happy net running, see you around.